Hak Purim Samayach. I'm making this video to celebrate the feast of Purim in 5785, Hebrew year 5785. It's on the Gregorian calendar in 2025. The book of Purim, or the book of Esther, in which the Purim festival is founded, can be cut in many different views. In order to prepare and celebrate the feast, I chose today, in my notes, it's the fourth theme, a theme of parties galore. For that, we have to understand there's an expression amongst Jews: our enemies wanted to kill us, but God saved us. Let's eat. In this light, the history of Esther can be viewed as a series of parties. We learn from having a closer look, looking at the book of Esther as a series of social functions, as parties, of dinners. The book of Esther opens with the Persian king's first banquet. After 2 years of military campaigns to suppress uprisings, Ahasuerus, or his Greek name Xerxes, but his Farsi name Ahasuerus, wants to unite his empire by creating a sense of belonging, by celebrating the empire's riches. All Ahasuerus' princes, servants, military leaders, as well as the nobles and the officials of the provinces were invited to give recognition to the attendees, indeed to serve as a motivational reward, to bring unity amongst diversity. The meeting was not unlike modern companies having a powwow to align strategy and to bind teams, cross-functional teams, together in one team. Ahasuerus, first, before he became the king of kings in the city of Shushan, was the king of the city of Babylon. There he faced an uprising because he did not serve Marduk, the Babylonian god, idol, and he crushed them. Then he was appointed, after his father's passing, as king of kings over the empire, 127 countries or kingdoms under his rule. And immediately the Egyptians revolted. In the first 2 years of his king of kingdom, he had to put down the Egyptians. He was angry and he was exceptionally cruel to the Egyptians, developing a reputation of being exceptionally cruel. And he said he didn't want to spend his rule fighting battles and to be cruel. He rather wants to build an empire that is coherent, where people pull together and where there's peace and safety. So that's the purpose of the first banquet that we read about. And after this first banquet, Ahasuerus organized a 180-day-long exhibition of his vast treasures to emphasize the glory and the majesty of the kingdom, the united kingdom, as the king of kings, all 127 provinces or kingdoms together. And he invited representatives from all 127 provinces of this vast empire to come and experience it. They came from as far as India and from Ethiopia and everything in between, and the Mediterranean Sea. They came in a scheduled procession to visit Shushan. Each team came for a couple of days or a week at a time. They were entertained, they were immersed in the empire culture, in the empire colors, in the strategy, but at the same time there was also the show of power, so that they should understand that they cannot succeed in an uprising against the mighty king and the mighty empire. So within this complex political mire of empire within Shushan itself, ore was used as a weapon. The strategic purpose was the outcome of the first banquet strategic plan to prevent further rebellion. After the exhibition, in the third year of Ahasuerus, he thanked the people of Shushan with a 7-day-long banquet. And it was arranged in the garden court of the palace. All the palace employees were invited, and the corporate colors of blue and white were prominently displayed. The banquet was recognition for a job well done in the previous 180-day-long exhibition period, and it was intended to cement employee loyalty through recognition. Strategically, its aim was to prevent insider dissidents and to eliminate the possibility of assassination. And incidentally, at the end of his rule, Ahasuerus was bludgeoned to death by one of his trusted advisors. So ultimately the strategy failed. It could have failed earlier as well, as you shall see. The king set laissez-faire drinking rules, accommodating every diverse mixture of people who were within his household. On the last day of the banquet, Ahasuerus let his guard down and he became gemoedelijk drunk. And then in that moment of weakness, under feeling happily intoxicated, his 7 advisor princes, who had evil attempt against him, and they concocted a plan to discredit him and to embarrass him. They pushed him to call Queen Vashti to display her beauty. It's not written in so many words, but the implications are that they required Vashti to do an erotic dance for them. Now Vashti was a royal princess, and she was well schooled in etiquette and in the law of the Medes and Persians. She understood that if she went to this dance and be an embarrassment, as Ahasuerus requested, then there would be legal grounds to have her executed and also to dethrone Ahasuerus, which probably would end in his execution as well. So as an amazing woman, she decided to sacrifice herself by not responding to the request of the king. That got her dethroned, but it saved the life of Ahasuerus. Afterwards, Ahasuerus, when he came to his senses, when he was sober again, he realized the gravity of his folly, and he loved Vashti. He really loved her, and he never recovered from her dethroning. So the 7 princes who advised him to get Vashti to dance, they disappeared from the Bible history, also from the chronicles of the empire. They never mentioned again after this, so I assume that Ahasuerus had them executed. But he regretted his action against Vashti and longed for her company, and that caused him to become depressed, and the depression lasted for the remainder of his days, for as long as he was king. And we see the depression materialize in him not taking care of matters of state. He, for instance, gives his ring to Haman, and later on he gives his ring to Mordechai to pass laws as they see fit. And it's a duty that belongs to him, but he couldn't care less because he longed for his beloved Vashti. So something else happened. His staff realized that he's depressed and that he's longing for Vashti. So they proposed to him to organize a beauty contest to find a beautiful girl, a beautiful woman, to lift his spirits, to get him out of his depression. And he agreed and gave them the go-ahead, but he himself did not stay in Shushan for the beauty competition or the celebration of female beauty. What happened is Vashti's brother, who was general of his army, was upset about what he did to Vashti. So he wanted a rebellion against Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus wanted to put him down, but he escaped and he fled to Greece. And in Greece, he raised an army in rebellion against Ahasuerus. So Ahasuerus departed with his army to put down this rebellion in Greece. And this battle between Ahasuerus or Xerxes and the army of Greece is recorded in the Hollywood movie called 300. It is historically accurate and you will enjoy watching that movie because it fits right into the book of Esther and the story of Purim, although it just tells a tiny part of the entire story. So Shushan, the city, was bristling with enthusiasm to celebrate female beauty. The beauty pageant's entrance probably found a depressed, brooding king to please. The festivities were supposed to lift his mood and through its intention to find a new queen. But indications are that Ahasuerus' campaign lasted 12 to 18 months against Greece, and he lost two very important historic battles in the process. But then when he returned to Greece, he was even more depressed. In the meantime, the time was well spent and fruitfully utilized by the beauty pageants. Each entrant had to be qualified and had to be pampered by beauty treatments. It was in two phases. First, a 6-month period with the oil of myrrh, followed by a further 6 months of being pampered with perfumes and with cosmetics. Myrrh was rare and expensive. It's still expensive today. It's a reddish brown dried sap of the thorny tree called Commiphora myrrha. The essential oil is extracted through a steam distillation process and it's used topically. You rub it on your skin. Myrrh essential oil facilitates the fading of unwanted blemishes on the skin. It smooths itchiness, it reduces symptoms of eczema, amongst other skin ailments. It effectively cleans, moisturizes and tightens the skin, thereby reducing and preventing further chapping, cracking and sagging. A true beauty queen treatment with oil of myrrh. A modern advert for myrrh essential oil says that myrrh heals headaches, back pain and joint swelling and pain. It's a powerful antioxidant. It promotes gut health. It combats mold and fungal infections and retards growth of cancer tumors. Myrrh has antimicrobial properties, killing bacteria, and if used orally, it will refresh one's breath. It facilitates the healing of sores and kills parasites from many sources, including parasites from pets or parasites from sexual activity or from contaminated food. Lastly, myrrh has beneficial sunscreen properties as well. And of course, it is easy to use. You just rub it on. Myrrh is surely fit for turning the girl next door into a queen. So that took 6 months for every contestant in the celebration of beauty. The perfume fragrances thereafter, perfume reacts differently with each and every skin it comes in contact with, and it can work counterproductively if it's used haphazardly. The beauty pageant entrants were given 6 months to discover the unique blend of aromatics that then will become their personal fragrance. It goes beyond masking body odor, of course, and it also aims to avoid overpowering scents. Fragrances easily influences one's mood. Remember, the king was depressed, so the girls wanted to lift his mood. And also importantly for these young ladies, smells form very strong memory bonds that the king, after spending a night with a girl, would remember her fragrance. And that is part of the seduction of the king. and lifting his spirit. A fragrance very quickly reminds people of loved ones and of past experiences. So for each contestant, their perfume choices would determine whether they became the queen or just another concubine. The outcome either way was a life sentence. Yes, the girls who entered the competition, if they were not chosen to be queen, they were moved to the palace of the concubines. They were not set free to marry another husband. They had one chance to impress the king, and failure to do so was a life sentence, a bitter life sentence. Cosmetics highlight or subdue one's prominent features, emphasizing your beauty and diminishing your blemishes, enhancing your beautiful eyes and making thin lips seem a little bit fuller, without pouting, of course. In the day of Esther, it was as crucial a tool of seduction as it is today. Another consideration for the 12-month-long beauty treatment was that the fact that no pregnancy remained hidden. With the harem staffed by eunuchs, the chances of a pregnancy from another source other than the king was eliminated. It left no room for unfair competition, i.e. ladies cavorting with gatekeepers in order to get favoritism in the pageant to be queen. We know that King Ahasuerus loved Esther most than any of the other girls. The fierce competition was finally over, and the winner, Queen Esther, celebrated with a great banquet. It was called Esther's Banquet, and it was attended by all the king's princes and servants. It was such a big banquet that a public holiday was declared for it. The king gave lavish gifts to everybody who attended Esther's banquet, and the aim being the purpose to emphasize his wealth and his goodwill. It was a fitting end for a year-long celebration of female beauty, and the final curtain call was a last assembly of all the contestants, much like the crowning of Miss Universe or Miss World in modern times. It was an event that Mordechai and others watched from a distance. Mordechai was standing at the gate. In between him and the contestants, or the stage and the crowd, were two guys who were plotting to assassinate Ahasuerus, and Mordechai overheard them and reported them. For the next party, we look at Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite. He was a loyal subject to King Ahasuerus, loyal, I should say, in inverted commas, and he rose through the ranks to be appointed to a position that equated to a prime ministerial position in modern politics. Because Haman hated the Jews, he proposed an evil plan to holocaust or ethnic cleanse all the Jews from the Persian Empire. He offered a bribe of 10,000 talents of silver. In today's value of silver, it equates to about $100 million US. That's what he offered to Ahasuerus. But the king declined the ransom, and he still approved the request. It's worth noting that Hamas have the same spirit as Haman. But Haman did not have this money to pay the ransom. His intent was to murder the Jews and steal their property, and he estimated their property value to be in excess of $100 million US in today's terms. And that's where he was going to get the ransom that he offered. But now Ahasuerus said he could keep it for himself. So in one fell swoop, all the good of the previous celebration towards a stable empire was destroyed in this action. This happened, and this is important, this happened on the first month of the year. It happened on the 13th day of the first month. The first month is called Nisan. You will know that that is the evening before the Passover. Actually, the Passover starts in that evening. The 14th day of Nisan is Passover. The feast starts in the evening after the day of the 13th. And it was on this day that Haman, on Passover, or the eve of Passover, that he proposed to commit a holocaust against the Jews. The Ahasuerus and Haman sat down to drink in the city of Shushan to celebrate their deal, but the city was in uproar. It was a festival of horror, like Mexico City's Festival of the Dead, or like Halloween. It was absolutely horrific. And you should know that if you plan ethnic cleansing of the Jews and you plan it on the eve of the Passover, remember the Passover is when Adonai Eloheinu slay the firstborn of every household in Egypt and set Israel free the morning after. So on this day is the day on which Haman had this evil plan. And he rolled dice to determine the day for exterminating the Jews. One dice in Farsi is called a pur. If you have more than one dice, the plural is Purim, hence the name of the festival of the rolling dice of Purim. And rolling the Purim, it was determined that the day of execution of the Jews was the 14th day of Adar. Adar is the 12th month. So they rolled the dice on the 13th day of the first month, and the date that was appointed was the 14th day of the 12th month. I'm not sure that this is correct, but it could very well be that the 13th day of the first month was a Friday the 13th, and that is the reason why we attached evil meaning to Friday the 13th. If not factually correct, at least in spirit it feels correct. Mordechai petitioned Esther then, and in their feverish communication produced a couple of memorial quotations that you would know. It's paraphrased as Mordechai saying to Esther, "You were born, or you were appointed for a time like this." And Esther's response, "Yes, I will go to the king. If I perish, I perish." And it's noteworthy that Mordechai never doubted that Adonai will provide relief and deliverance for the Jews. Because he said to Esther, if you don't come to the salvation of your people, Adonai will find another way to save the Jews. But it will be at the cost of you and your family. And that is for sure. That is a lesson that the Antichrist is not learning, because he will repeat that same mistake. That's a lesson that Hamas did not learn, because they repeated the same mistake as well. Adonai will always provide some sort of relief, some sort of escape and deliverance for the Jews, and it will be at the cost of the people who had the opportunity to deliver them but failed to do so. At Esther's request, Mordechai agreed, and all the Jews in the city of Shushan had a fast for 3 days and 3 nights to humble themselves before Adonai Eloheinu, the God of Israel, and to call for his mercy and intervention. It was a celebration, or a fast and prayer festival, if you like. The fasting of Esther is for days and night. It's not like some religions who fast in the days and then feast at night because their false god cannot see in the dark what they're doing. Adonai, the God of Israel, he sees equally well in the darkness as in the light. To him even the night is as bright as the day. So they fasted day and night. On the third day, rising from her fast, Esther went to the king. Notice the prophetic meaning of these words. On the third day, she rose from her grave, her fast, and she went to the king. Her breathtaking beauty overcame him, and he eagerly accepted her invitation for an intimate lunch party, a luncheon or a banquet party at lunchtime with his new best friend Haman. Ahasuerus knew he was getting buttered up for something, but neither he or Haman knew what was coming. There is a lot of speculation why Esther requested a second intimate banquet the day thereafter when Ahasuerus asked her what she wanted to ask. Excuse me. Speculation is that maybe they drank too much wine, maybe she needed more time to gather her courage. There's an interesting story that Haman was dressed in a costume suit of an idol, and that disturbed Esther's confidence. The delay, however, by one day, from the one day to the next, it created the opportunity for Haman to build the gallows or the impalement pole, as the case may be, intended for Mordechai. And that one day was also the night in which Ahasuerus had his sleepless night. So if you ask me, why did Esther not ask on the first luncheon what she wanted? Why did she delay to another day, another lunch before she asked? I say that it was Adonai's plan in order for Haman to construct the gallows in his thought for Mordechai, but which Adonai intended for himself and for his sons. And it was to give Ahasuerus a sleepless night. So that night, in between the two lunch parties, after much tossing and turning, Ahasuerus realized that he was not going to sleep. So he wanted a bedtime story, somebody to bring the chronicles from his court, and they were reading to him. And in the chronicles they read was the account of Mordechai's loyalty to him, and it became fresh in his memory. And it left him determined to give public recognition to Mordechai for the good deed he did to the king. Mordechai's honor parade was Haman's humiliation parade. It is the next in the series of parties of to consider in the story of Esther, the history of Esther, and the story of Purim. Haman's friend understood the prophetic significance, and they warned him that Mordechai is going to succeed and he will fail. And while they were still having this conversation, the king's men came by his house and said, "Hey, buddy, come to the dinner party." And so Haman was summoned to the second banquet at Esther's house for the king and himself. And during this luncheon, Esther exposed Haman's evil plan against her people. King Ahasuerus was livid, and he initially stormed into the garden to gather his thoughts, whilst Haman, who knew that this is his last day, that he's going to be executed, when he saw the king's reaction, when he heard what Esther was saying, he begged and pleaded for his life. As Ahasuerus were coming back into Esther's room, he saw Haman's desperate falling onto Esther, and he shouted his dismay because of it. As soon as Ahasuerus accused Haman for assaulting the queen, the eunuchs who were the guards, they covered Haman's face and they led him away to be hanged or impaled, we don't know, on the 23-meter high gallows that he planted in his own garden. So then Mordechai was promoted to the position of prime minister that was previously held by Haman. Mordechai wanted to recall the law, but the law of Medes and Persians cannot be recalled. So on the 23rd day of the third month, the decree was issued to allow the Jews to assemble and protect themselves against their enemies on the 14th of Adar, and it was dispatched to the whole empire. Mordechai came out of the king's palace dressed in the empire's corporate colors of blue and white robes, and he wore a purple robe over the blue and white, and he wore a crown of gold to celebrate in the next party the reversal of circumstances. This whole city of Shushan celebrated loudly with lights and with gladness, with joy and with honor. Salvation have indeed came for the Jews. And then just before the dreaded 14th day of Adar, the Jews gathered together in defensive positions and they destroyed their enemies. This, in the city of Shushan, it continued for a second day. Esther, on the second day, realized that Haman had 10 sons who were as evil as their father, and she requested their extermination, and all 10 of them were hanged or impaled, as the case may be, on the same gallows that Haman had prepared. And so doing, Esther ensured that there would be no repeat of Haman's evils. Esther's vision to prevent another massacre of Jews endured until the Romans eventually destroyed Jerusalem and the temple in 70 AD, and finally in 135 AD. In between, after the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, was the famous case of Masada in 73 AD. If you don't know what that is, it is very important history to read. Back to Esther and Mordechai. They issued a new decree then to celebrate the feast of Purim on these dates. It's the 14th and the 15th days of the 12th month, Adar. And in short, the conclusion of Purim is the enemy tried to destroy the Jews, but God intervened. So let's eat.